Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. Hi, I'm 50 male. I have a daughter named Sasha who is 19 female. She's a brilliant student and always got straight A's in school and was also the head girl. My wife and I brought her up really well to be independent and a good person. Even though she was our only child, we didn't spoil her with money or gifts, but of course gave her a comfortable life. Sasha always wanted to move out of our city and live on her own for college. Although my wife and I were not too particular, as our city has some really good colleges, we allowed her to go as we knew she was responsible enough. Her tuition was covered by a scholarship, but my wife and I covered her living expenses. Initially, when she joined her college, she told us that she would take up a part-time job to fund her expenses, but she didn't follow through. But as my wife and I could spend it on her, we didn't say much about it. However, as the months progressed, Sasha started hanging out with the wrong crowd. She started drinking and started spending too much time and money on partying and clothes. She became very arrogant and would always ask for more money each month, and this led to many arguments over the phone. She accused my wife of turning me against her and all. 3 months ago, she wanted to go for a trip with her friends. She had told us about this trip long back, and we had clearly told her that she had to save up from the monthly money we sent her, which was quite generous. She said okay, but then she hadn't saved up. When she asked us for money, we said no. She was so mad and started screaming over the phone. She called us names and said we were misers, and of course, she couldn't go on the trip. She was extremely mad about it. 2 months ago, my wife suddenly got a heart attack in the middle of the night, and I rushed her to the hospital. As soon as I admitted her and the formalities were done, I immediately called Sasha to inform her. She didn't pick up her call. And then I got busy and asked my sister and brother-in-law to call her and even gave them a couple of her friends' numbers to call. She didn't pick up. Finally, one of her friends picked up and we asked to pass on the information to Sasha. The friend called back in 10 minutes to tell us that she let Sasha know. However, she said Sasha was not going to come home as she thinks her mom deserves it. My sister was shocked, and I walked out of the hospital room to see her screaming at Sasha over the phone. When I got to know, I broke down crying. I really thought I failed as a father. When my wife got better, we discussed this. She said maybe we have kept Sasha on a pedestal the whole time, because even in college, when she was acting out, she was still getting good grades and hence we didn't follow through with the punishment as often as we should have. So we decided we had to put our foot down. A week ago, Sasha came home for the summer. It was a bit awkward. She was always on her phone. She then suddenly asked us yesterday that she wanted to move out with her friends to an apartment. She reminded us that we had promised her that she could move out in a second year. But I said no, because she needs to check her attitude and behavior and discuss the whole hospital and heart attack thing. However, instead of apologizing, she got mad and started this whole rant again and left the house to stay at her friends. Am I the a-hole? Update. Sasha and her mom had a huge talk. It was a bit of a screaming match, of course. However, she did end up apologizing, but mostly because of compulsion. Hope she changes. I'm sorry about your daughter, OP. You and your wife are not a-holes. Your daughter is just being very unreasonable and immature. I can't believe she said her mom deserved to get sick. That's the worst thing anyone can say to their parents. You and your wife need to stop pampering her. You have to put your foot down and discipline her. I would also advise you all to go for family therapy. I really hope she changes. Story 2. For context, my parents have been split up since I was around 1 or 2. I was raised by my mother and stepfather for 16 years. I will admit my mother was not the greatest, but she definitely did her best with what she was given, and my stepfather is the person I respect most out of everyone. I consider him to be my true father. Anyways, after around 16 years, I decided I wanted to get to know my biological father and my family on his side more. They lived in Florida while I was living in Massachusetts. Most of our interactions were either week-long trips to see him since I was 7 and phone calls. My mother agreed in 2018 and I moved to Florida with my biological dad, my stepmother and my siblings, 1 brother and 2 sisters. As I got to know my father and his wife until 2020, they ended up being very toxic and it was agreed by everyone I spoke with that it was unhealthy to be around. At least I got to know them. Around October of 2020, my entire family got sick, and I had to stay with my aunt for health reasons. After about a month, my father demanded that I come back to the house immediately. I didn't feel safe to come back, and he told my aunt that I'm not allowed to stay with her anymore. After I found out that I couldn't stay with my aunt anymore, he gave me an ultimatum and said, "You either come back today or your belongings will be in bags at the front door," on a phone call. At the time I was 18, going to school and paying electricity and rent to stay there. Since I didn't feel comfortable coming back and I had nowhere else to go, I had to move in with my mother back in Massachusetts. I wanted to avoid this as I took the risk to lose my scholarship if my residency changed. This did not make him happy, and he told me I was being selfish and running away from my problems. He still demanded that I come back. This was on a phone call on January 1st, 2021. I have not spoken to him since then. In February of 2021, I was able to move in with my partner and their family until I was able to get back on my feet. And now I'm purchasing a home with my partner. He tries to text me almost every month since January 1st, saying that he loves me and that he misses me. But I have left him with one message, that if we are going to have a relationship again, he needs to apologize for giving me the ultimatum and making me feel trapped with nowhere to go. He has shown no signs that his views have changed and still believes it is my responsibility to take care of him and his family as he has taken care of me. So am I the a-hole? Edit. Thank you everyone for your input, insight and kind words. I was very nervous as I wanted to reconnect with my family because I'm now on my feet with a house and doing well, and I wanted to see my grandparents who are not in good condition. I wasn't sure how to move forward and wanted some other opinions on the situation. At least I know I wasn't crazy and insanely overthinking the situation. I know how to move forward and work on what to do next. Again, thank you for all your help. OP, how on earth are you responsible for taking care of him and his family? You lived there for like 2 years, and he thinks you owe him or something. You are his child. Parents choose to have children and it's their responsibility to take care of their children until they grow up and move out. You were also paying rent and electricity. You were right to ask for an apology. If he can't give it to you sincerely, then there's no point having a relationship with him, not the a-hole. Now for some comments. Not the a-hole. It sounds like he has done very little actual caring for you. Having you pay rent and part of the utilities to live with your parents isn't really being taken care of. Wanting an apology because he intentionally created a shitty situation for you to enforce his will is completely unreasonable. Not wanting to live with him and put yourself in his power again does too. It sounds like you're going to good places in your life. Don't let him derail you. Not the a-hole. What does he mean by, as he has taken care of you? He took care of you for a whole whopping 2 years. By the way, I wouldn't rush to kick him out of your life though. Sometimes parents change. My dad never apologized for his abuse to me, but as he got older and I was no longer living in his house, he did change for the better. He is still an ass sometimes, but he no longer tries to control or abuse me. So for that effort at least, I will silently forgive him. Not the a-hole. You determined he was toxic after living with him. By my calculations, you were 18 when you left to live with your aunt. You were legally an adult. He was not in a position to give you an ultimatum, and even if you were a minor, ultimatums are not healthy. You did the right thing to leave the toxic environment and limit your contact with him. Demanding an apology is holding him accountable for his actions. I hope you maintain a good relationship with your mom. Story 3. Backstory. My parents are divorced, so I, 25 female, would go between NC and FL. I never had a great relationship with my father, 45 male. He always said small comments like he didn't like how quiet I was, or my body type was too fat or too thin, depending on the visit. When I started college, I told him how much his comments affected my self-esteem. For a period of time, things got a bit better between us. I graduated in 2018. I got my first big girl job and was also in grad school to receive my clinical licensure. I reside in a different state than my father, so visiting had to be done thoughtfully planned out. In this particular year, I had visited twice already. I wanted to visit over the winter holiday season, but due to life, I was unable to. I told my father about this. He was disappointed but seemed to be understanding. I told him that I had to go to a city around an hour away from him for work in January. Since I would be so close, I would come down a couple days early. We even planned a day to go to Disney all together. Before my visit, my friend won tickets to see a Broadway show. She invited me, full expenses paid. I called my father to tell him out of excitement. January came along. I called to finalize the days that I would come to see him. In a nutshell, he told me that I treat him as if he were a second-class citizen and was selfish. I was confused by this, but still decided to go visit him before my work trip. When I arrived at his home after driving for over 14 hours, he barely said anything to me. My stepmom locked herself into their room, and they had brought my little brother to grandma's for the night. The next morning, my father was up waiting for me and said he wanted to go to breakfast. During breakfast, he basically stated how disappointed he was in me and how I didn't have the capability to care for others since I chose to see a Broadway show over him. I apologized if my actions had caused him to feel unloved. I tried to reassure him that was not the case. He then proceeded to tell me that he was canceling the Disney day because being around me would ruin any ounce of happiness he could have there. I asked him to rethink that, please, and that I would still be going there with the hopes to see him and the rest of the family. I went to the park and ran into my dad and the family. They just turned around and walked the opposite way and ignored me. I have not talked to him in 2 years. For the first year, I sent cards on holidays, but recently stopped due to no reply. I still talk to my grandparents and my aunt from his side. I recently had a conversation with my aunt and she asked why I was refusing to talk to my father. I mentioned to her that these past 2 years have been the most anxiety-free years that I have had in my young life. She told me I needed to be the bigger person and reached out to him. Granted, he has not once reached out to me during this time. So am I the a-hole for refusing to have a relationship with my father? Now for some comments. No, you're not the a-hole. Never ever think that, okay? Children aren't supposed to be the ones to chase their parents to have relationships with them. Just tell your father's side of the family that he knows how to get in touch with you. You are his oldest kid and you're not going to chase him to be in your life, as you're an adult and you can choose who you want in your life. Not the a-hole. You did reach out to him, sending cards, etc., and he never replied or sent any in return. You cannot choose who your blood-related family is. However, you can choose who to keep in your life once you're an adult. There is no reason to try to maintain any type of relationship with someone you don't like or who has been abusive. None at all. Blood-related is not an acceptable excuse for forcing yourself to try to maintain any type of relationship with someone. Not the a-hole. Your dad is a major a-hole and toxic. Rather than tell you he was upset, he let you drive all the way to him and then tell you the next day. He lied saying he cancelled everything and had everyone ignore you. Extreme a-hole move to see you at the park and ignore you like you weren't his daughter. He did that, not you. If anything, he should be the one to apologize, not you. Your aunt is equally an a-hole for saying you, the child, should be the bigger person rather than her immature brother. It's deafeningly clear how much your sperm donor cares about you, seeing how he hasn't reached out since. Don't reach out, unless you want to go down the toxic rabbit hole again. It's a moot point getting him to reconcile, seeing how he believes he did nothing wrong.